In 2010, FIFA awarded the 2022 World Cup to Qatar. While Qataris celebrated, others were shocked.
Host country Qatar is facing growing criticism over its treatment of women, migrant workers, and the LGBTQ+ community.
Qatar already heavily criticized for its treatment of the migrant workers who built the massive World Cup infrastructure.
The new report reveals just how treacherous the working conditions are.
Migrant workers are dying on the job in record numbers.
But now, for millions of football fans around the world, this is their first impression of Qatar. Amnesty International were one of the first voices to accuse the state of
sports washing.
Sports washing is when an authoritarian regime uses a major sporting event like the World Cup or the Olympics as a method of distraction for its crimes it may be committing against its populace.
Actually, end of the day, fans don't really care what happens. As far as they're concerned, as I can watch the match, I support my team. Even if we look at the last 1 year, there have been a lot of issues about how Manchester City was bought over, how Newcastle was bought over. But end of the day, if you look at the viewership, it has not dropped. Even in Qatar, there are a lot of NGOs which have been making noise over the last couple of years about the labor issues and all these things. When the World Cup comes, everybody forgets about that.
I've been to Qatar twice as a reporter, seeing how the World Cup is being organized and also the launching of the stadium. Obviously you're following the organizers, so they would want to portray a very good image. But, me being me, I decided to explore things on my own, speak to the migrant workers and everything. I did ask them about the human rights record and so on, and they were open about it, they were frank about it.
Last September, The Guardian exposed serious labour rights abuses here in Qatar, including the deaths of hundreds of migrant workers.
50 kg, 60 kg बोरीमा रमल कसेर बोरीमा रमल कसेर यो टाउकोमा लिएर माथि जाने ऊपर जाने।
अब तपाईको पानीकै विषयमा हेरौँ, अब नुहाउने यताउता युज गर्ने पानी नै हाम्रो नुनिलो पुरै नुन भएकै पानी छ है। खाने पानी पनि अब त्यति राम्रो पानी दिइराखेको छैन।
I was told by the World Cup CEO that they value the contribution of these people. 10 years later, seeing what's happening right now, I think Qatar have taken steps to make the World Cup a World Cup for all.
Recent laws to introduce a minimum wage in Qatar and the removal of the kafala system, which many have described as legal slave labour, have been widely talked about.
We have to say that there has been a lot of improvement that happened on that front. We've used the World Cup in a very positive way as a catalyst to drive this change.
But not everyone is convinced.
These reforms have come too little too late. They were enforced 10 years after Qatar was awarded the right to host the World Cup, after almost all the stadiums were completed.
So if it turned out that 2022 Men's World Cup in Qatar resulted in sweeping labor reform in the country, if it suddenly put women on a new footing in that country, I mean, amazing, what a World Cup. Let's do that again everywhere. But, that's far too much to hope for.
Sports washing accusations have been made against the Beijing Winter Olympics, the 2018 World Cup in Russia, Saudi Arabia's Live Golf Tour and F1 track, and countless Premier League football clubs that have been bought up by Middle Eastern royalty and Russian oligarchs. So, does sports washing actually work?
Burnley staged a minute's applause for Ukrainians being subjected to a Russian invasion. A sizable number of Chelsea fans began chanting Abramovich's name over the top of the cheers and were then booed by the Burnley supporters.
This is like a really nice window onto one way in which sports washing can work and get people to defend a sports washer as one of their own. That's what a sports washer can hope to achieve in part. And you look at some of the other clubs, those are high-profile clubs with lots of money now who are performing very well, winning lots of things, signing big players. Fans tend to like that. And you can expect that a whole global audience of fans attached to those clubs has better feelings about that ownership group and their affiliations than they otherwise would have had.
When Newcastle was taken over by the Saudi Arabian consortium, people started talking about it by saying, they are taking over the team to absolve themselves from the human rights records and so on. But the fans in Newcastle are happy because the money is being pumped in, they're buying players and the team is improving. So you have that ethical dilemma. And it's not only Newcastle, like a lot of sports entities right now realize that the money is in the Middle East. Sports now is being run like a business. We may hate it, but it's a reality that we have to face. We can keep on talking about it. Will it change or not? I think it's tough. So for that to change, it's time for the fans to be truly part of that sporting atmosphere. Like take Malaysia for example. If fans go to stadiums all the time, teams should be able to generate income, and you don't need to rely on money from the politicians. That's one example.
One of the earliest accusations of sports washing, long before the term was created, was the 1934 World Cup, hosted by Italy. Italian leader Mussolini was reported to have used the event to promote fascism, just a few years before the Second World War broke out. Since then, the sports industry has expanded beyond recognition.
You take IOC for an example. International Olympic Committee makes billions. Their budget sometimes is more than some of the smaller countries around the world. They're so powerful that even the government in control cannot do anything about it. They are also looking at how much of money they can earn rather than looking at sports washing. So that becomes a problem because you cannot blame spectators, you cannot blame the governments when the IFs and the governing bodies themselves are actually putting money above everything else. If that doesn't change, nothing will change in sports washing.
It is true that different kinds of sporting institutions have a responsibility to address this issue. Unfortunately, our sporting institutions, such as they are not high-functioning or uncorrupt. So if we're in a situation where we're counting on FIFA to protect us from moral problems, right, then we are in a very bad situation indeed. I would like to watch the World Cup. I would rather not have to come to the conclusion that I'm a terrible person for doing that. Is that possible? I mean, I think so. The audience is, I would say, compared to previous times, relatively empowered to both understand what sports washing is and to react to that fact ahead of time. Maybe you have to sign petitions, coordinate with other fans, wear the protest color. There's at least more power on the part of the audience to play a role in whether sports washing actually works or doesn't.